podcast. It's the official podcast of ISC West, and we are here on the show floor. We have, somebody who's been in the news. Well, not you specifically, but the company's been in the news lately with a lot of good momentum and good, I would call it quite interesting comings and goings with a lot of organizations within our industry, and it's been fun to watch. I've gotten to get to know you over the years, and it's interesting to see from what was been a sort of a vision of what you had to actually start to really take hold. So hopefully we can talk a little bit about that. But Matt, why don't you introduce yourself for those that don't know you, and what does SwiftConnect do?
Sure. I'm Matt Kopel. I'm co-founder, co-CEO of SwiftConnect. Thank you for having me on this illustrious broadcast.
Oh, this is how we're going to do it. I got you.
SwiftConnect is a about 6-year-old venture-backed company. We are a connected access network, which means we create interoperability and integration and automation between different systems within a customer's environment, as well as systems that might be adjacent to a customer's environment, like the access system of their landlord, where their people have to enter as well.
Nice. Very good. So recently there's been a handful of announcements that have come out. A little bit ago, you took an investment from HID, most recently an investment from dormakaba. How would you explain, like, that? 'Cause it doesn't happen very often in our industry. So for people that are seeing it, what should they make of it? What does it mean? What does it represent? Why? I guess, like, whatever part you'd like to get into, and I'll build off of what you say with some follow-up questions, but help me frame it, if you would, of what does it mean, why, and what does it symbolize?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing is these relationships come from working together for mutual customers over time.
Okay.
So these aren't things where people call each other and say, "Hey, do you want to get in this round, or you want to do something?" These are shared wins at mutual customers that develop into kind of real relationships and real collaboration. So I think that's important to say. And our relationship with HID, our relationship with dormakaba, which, Legic is included in that as well, has been developed organically, and we really like those guys. And we've had a lot of shared success, and then they've done a really good job. I think in those cases, their products are either enabled or in some ways brought to market by our product. So, in the same light, our product is made much more useful, or maybe doesn't even really exist without their product.
Right.
We've built our company in many ways on top of those products, and on top of what Apple's done, and on top of what Google's done. And so there's a mutual dependency, and there's also a mutual benefit for working together. I think it also reflects the reality that for these large, complex enterprise organizations that we serve with them, that for a variety of reasons, the world isn't uniform. Maybe they're the product of a merger where one company had one system and one type of hardware, and another company had something else, and those two companies got merged together. Or a company has a uniform system or uniform hardware, but then they rent space in landlords that have different things. And so these companies that you mentioned, HID and dormakaba, are focused on building a solution, which they've done a good job of, that serves a purpose. And interoperability is not necessarily that purpose, because they're focused on other things, and that's fine. I think that they find value in what we do because the interoperability allows everybody to benefit.
Yeah.
Customers are much happier when the systems that they've invested in work with the other things that they've invested in. And so if that doesn't happen natively, we're there for that.
Yeah. And then, so if we take a step back, you said it's been 6 years, right?
Yeah.
So both of these types of organizations have been around for decades at this point. So what changed, say, in the past 6 years, to where I would believe, many of them believe, they probably could have done something like this, right? So clearly there's been a shift in the mindset, maybe the marketplace, maybe the technology expansion of things that have gone on, in that 6-year period. You've had, Apple, Google, Samsung come into the space too. So, like, there's some market dynamics. If you had to boil it down to what's transition and change, because I actually believe that it also represents not only you all in the market, but it also shows them a change in their culture, if you would, to where they would see a partnership like this make a lot of sense.
I think the culture thing is right. Number one, I think they're definitely more open to new ideas and new things. So, but I think there's two other changes that have happened. One, access control used to be a box that somebody would buy and plug in, and it was basically the same as a toaster, and it worked. And when you plugged it in, and it did, just what it was supposed to do, and there wasn't high expectations that it worked with other things. It was a toaster.
Yeah.
And then so that's changed with cloud, with more customer expectations that come from that, and just as our expectations of society of products have grown, right? That's occurred. The second thing I think that's big is the user experience benefits that Apple and Google have brought to this have raised the threshold of what's okay.
Yeah.
And previously, if you had to go sit in a card office and get your picture taken and wait for a card to be printed at every single location you had to go to, right? When we first started, there's people who have stacks of cards in their wallet or in their purse, and they have to like go and like they show these off with pride, or like it's like battle scars.
Yeah.
The expectation that doesn't exist anymore, and so the only way to fulfill those expectations is with interoperability, and the best way to be efficiently interoperable is with the network that we've built.
Yeah. No, it's funny. We're going to record our podcast after this, and one of the takeaways, we try to say, like, what are the trends or things that we saw? And usually it's like, oh, we saw the bluest, the blinkiest lights, and it's the new blinky light. But actually, what it's kind of interesting, and I'm not sure if it's showed up in the show floor yet, because there's a level of sameness as I walk through there. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Like everyone's now got AI. But what I've noticed is there's like a mindset change that's happened. And I think some of the openness, some of the business model changes that have happened, there's just a mindset change that I believe is going to allow things like this to happen that have not happened before. And I don't know if it would have happened on its own. I think it takes new ideas and new people and new thoughts that come in to actually sort of say, like, no, we got this. And a customer base, frankly, that I think that's also one of those things.
Yeah.
You've been able to figure out how to get a customer base to also raise their hand and say, we want this, and say, we want to do it with them. So you come along as well.
But I think customers have had maybe higher expectations than what's been delivered for a long time. I think maybe now the difference is because it's not a toaster, because it's an ongoing supported, cloud service.
Yeah.
The people who are building and providing that service hear from the customer.
Yeah.
Whereas before it's just like you just drop ship something and then that's once the sale's done, the relationship is over. Now, once the sale's done, the relationship just began.
Yeah.
And that's I think part of the difference.
No, I can definitely see it. So if you had to boil down to like, okay, so where does this go? Share with a little bit of a vision of how you see this all evolving. Now that you got sort of a group with you and there'll continue to be adoption, what does good look like as we move forward? Because I know how you're solving for some of the changes that are needed, but it's going to continue to evolve and go somewhere else too. So where is that else?
I think what good looks like is what the digital identity world looks like today.
Okay.
And by the way, they're not perfect. There's another conference going on right now in San Francisco called RSA.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it's the same week as this. Otherwise,
how that works, right?
Otherwise, we'd probably be there. They've been able to create interoperability, create a good user. Think about what SSO is. SSO is a more secure experience. That's a better experience. They've been able to do that, but they've been able to do that in a way that doesn't erode the money that's made by everybody. In fact, they've actually increased
it, yeah,
everything,
yeah.
and they've provided more value, and so that industry makes us. You say it's a cottage industry. I think that industry just makes us look like old and rusty.
Yeah.
But that's what good looks like, and that's where I think this needs to get to. We might all be held back by legacy mindsets or legacy products, but there's vendors here that offer alternatives to legacy products that don't look like those at all, which shows it's possible.
Yeah.
And those guys are going to win out.
Yeah, no, I've told that. I think for far too long we've allowed the nevers of our industry to dictate the growth, the experiences, the deliverables that we've done. And I think it's more going to be the yeses and maybes and the already there people that are actually going to be taking advantage of the mainstream market and what that will look like versus the cottage. I think it will still exist. That's fine. It just won't be the dominant voice of what's going ahead.
The foundation of everything that a company does is culture and mindset.
Yeah.
And that leads to what your products look like. That leads to how you think. There's examples here, like you can look at some of the experiences in booths here. I won't mention names, but that are amazing.
Yeah.
And it like that ethos is reflected in their product, where then you walk 5 feet and you see their legacy competitor,
Yeah.
and
you wonder why.
And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, it's very clear.
Yeah.
It's very clear. All right. Well, I appreciate it. This is quick, but
Thanks for having me.
We'll have an ongoing conversation around this as things continue to evolve. But I appreciate you making the time to go do this, and good luck when you get home.
Thank you.